something.
Try H something.
H?
Yeah, for hearing.
Okay, my drink. You
Ma-
told me and I forgot what it was.
That's okay. Do you mind if I have a look? Do you mind if I have a look?
Oh.
Okay.
The minister's here. Ooh. Ooh, good morning. Everybody awake now? Ooh. Today I'm joined by my colleague, the Reverend Kelly Asprooth-Jackson, along with the worship team of Drew Collins, Linda Warren, and Daniel Carnes. The vision of First Unitarian Society is growing souls, connecting with one another, and embodying our Unitarian Universalist values in our lives, in our community, and in our world. If you are visiting us today, welcome. We are so very glad that you are with us. If you would like more information about our programs and activities, please stop by the welcome table. That is located in the Commons, that direction next to the elevator. We also hope you'll be able to stay and join us for coffee hour immediately following service, also in the Commons. Today at 12:15 p.m., we will hold our fall parish meeting. This is an important occasion in the democratic governance of our congregation, and details about the agenda may be found in the red floors or on our website. Let me know after the service if you have any trouble finding those and we can help. We will be hearing a presentation from our Mission and Vision Task Force, as well as joining together in discussion around who we are as a congregation and who we want to be together. We will also vote on our youth board member, as well as Andy Carlson as our affiliated community minister. You are all invited and strongly encouraged to attend because your voice and your vision are essential to who we are. And that parish meeting will be in person. It will also be on Zoom. So if you get home and you don't want to drive back at 12:15, there is a link on the homepage of the website. Please join us on Zoom. Our preschool class, Chalice Children, will have a teddy bear party today to conclude their unit on teddy bears. How many grown-ups would like to be spending your time on a unit on teddy bears? I'm here for this. So as a part of that, they're going to be parading through the Commons and the crossing area during coffee hour. There's going to be music, and there's going to be teddy bears, and you can let them know how much you celebrate with them, with your attention, and you can even applaud as you see them coming through. Our Free to Believe class that normally meets in Courtyard Room B will be meeting in the Gabler Living Room today up in our landmark building. Teachers will bring that class back down to the Commons at the end of class, so you can just wait down here to pick them up. And now, I invite you to join me in a moment of silence as we center ourselves and bring ourselves fully into this time, joining together once again in community. These are the days when the air grows chill, when layers become fashionable again, or at least necessary. When we warm our hands around hot cups and feel the urge to huddle and to nest with the people or the animals we love, or with a good book or a good ball of yarn.
These are the days when the trees set off fireworks in their branches, still life explosions of oranges and yellows and reds, when the stoic sentinels of the natural landscape reveal their fabulousness in a vibrant cacophony of color to celebrate life before the little death of winter.
These are the days of wood smoke and the musk of rotting leaves, the scents that bring to mind the ending that everything has to find as part of being alive. When the turning wheel of existence fills every moment in the open air, a constant reminder that death is a part of life and life persistently abounds.
These are the days of ghosts and goblins, of homemade masks and plastic fangs, of groan-inducing joke costumes and sugary treats. When the lives of neighbors touch, however much in passing, when come as you aren't is the expectation, and when we get to try being something different, or even something truer than we would otherwise be.
These are the days when we remember the dead, the ones who loved us, the ones who knew us, when we keep alive their memory and feel again the touch of grief, our reminder that we know them and love them still.
These days hold memory and comfort and beauty and death. Come, let us spend this sacred hour of them together.
And we invite you now to rise in all the ways we do, to join in our words of affirmation as we light our chalice. We light this chalice in memory of the courage of those who have struggled for freedom, the persistence of those who have struggled for justice, and the love of those who have built beloved communities to carry on the light of hope.
May the light which is before you nurture and sustain the light within you. And now let us sing together our opening hymn in the gray hymnal, number 103, For All the Saints. Saints who from their labors rest, who thee by faith before the world confess, thy name most holy be forever blessed. Their rock, their shelter, and their might, their strength and solace in the well-fought fight. Thou in the darkness deep, the one true light. Communion of the saints divine, we live in struggle, they in glory shine, yet all are one in thee, for all are thine. Strife is fierce, the conflict long, steals on the ear the distant triumph song, and hearts are brave again, and arms are strong.
like to invite anyone forward who would like to join me right now. Good morning. Hello. It's good to see you. Oh, okay. I see a cape. I see a dinosaur. Oh, dragon. Oh, excuse me. A dragon. I sincerely apologize for misidentifying the dragon as a dinosaur. The fire breath was concealed, so I feel a little bit better now about my mistake. Thank you so much. You saw someone in a cape? Oh, well, I see someone in a cape right here. Yeah. So, good morning. I have a question for you to help me answer this morning. I'm hoping that we can address it together. My question is, you got it! You read ahead. Thank you so much. Why do we celebrate Halloween? Who has an answer? Please, yes. Because it is joyful. Oh, I just adore that answer. Thank you so much. Yes, I agree. It is joyful. And that is a very good reason to do a thing. So, yes.
Tomorrow's Halloween.
Tomorrow is Halloween. You got it. You're correct about that. And your mom even lets me wear pajamas. Oh, well, very nice. Very nice. Yes, what do we have? Because it's a tradition. Well, that's a fine reason to do certain things. Yes.
So, one of my friends told me that for people, they would ask for candy and go door to door and ask for candy, and that's how it started.
Oh, so one of your friends told you that this started with people sort of begging door to door, begging for candy. Well, I mean, you could beg for many things, and candy is not an illegitimate thing to beg for, I guess. Yes.
I think I know how Halloween started.
You think you know how Halloween started? Okay.
It started as All Hallows Eve.
It started as All Hallows Eve. So let's talk about that. That's it. We're gonna pause here to talk about what is All Hallows Eve, because you're right. The word Halloween comes from a little bit longer phrase called All Hallows Eve. Can anyone explain to me what those words together mean? Yeah?
I remember the jack-o'-lanterns come from evil spirits, and they carved out turnips and other harvests for autumn harvest.
Yes, so the jack-o'-lantern tradition is about a way of protecting a house or a community against evil spirits, and you also remembered that before they were doing it with pumpkins, some people were doing it with turnips, which seems a lot harder to carve to me. But we're going to pause for just a second to talk about All Hallows Eve. So All Hallows Eve, just those words together, is another way of saying the night before. Eve is another way of saying the night before the day of All Hallows, and All Hallows is another name for All Saints' Day. What's a saint? Do you have something you wanted to say? What did you want to say?
You can also use pumpkins for a jack-o'-lantern contest.
You can also use pumpkins for a jack-o'-lantern contest. I agree. You could do that.
You don't even need to carve them.
Oh.
Sometimes you can actually have materials to do it like my Olaf pumpkin.
Oh.
I literally made an Olaf pumpkin.
You made a pumpkin for Olaf. I assume the character from Frozen. Yes. Very good. So, what's a saint? Does anybody know what a saint is? What do we got? What do we think, Dragon? What? Christian spirits. So that's potentially you're right that the word saint is often associated with the Christian religion, but actually we use that word for a number of different ideas from a number of different religions. There are people that are called saints in Judaism and people who are called saints in Islam, among others. I've seen it used in Hinduism as well. So it's not strictly only a Christian idea, but here's my explanation for what a saint is. It's a little bit iffy. It varies from place to place, but a pretty decent explanation is for those religions that have an idea about a good place and a bad place for the people to go after they die, The saints are the people that that particular religion is pretty certain are in the good place.
So you have to be dead.
You have to be dead.
Oh, yeah, also the bad place is Crocker.
And
I'm about to go back to my house and get a dry knife to kill myself.
let's not do that. So, if you hadn't heard already, let me tell you that in our tradition, we don't usually believe that. I mean, I'm not actually here to tell you what you can and can't believe. That's not sort of my job. But for the most part, we're not big on the idea of a bad place after you die. So, either, depending on how you look at it, we either don't have any saints at all, or we think that everybody is a saint.
What? Okay,
Take your pick.
you're just making this more confusing.
But we've gone down this rabbit hole, and I love going down rabbit holes with you. But I have maybe a question that's going to bring us back to something.
Alice in Wonderland.
So we've talked a little bit about the origin of Halloween. But my question is, why do we celebrate Halloween? What are you looking forward to tomorrow on Halloween? Candy, 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 candy. Looking forward to getting the candy. Yep, that's part of the candy process. Yes?
I'm looking forward to dressing up as a person from Harry Potter.
Looking forward to dressing up as a character from Harry Potter. Very nice. Yes? Seeing neighbors in costumes. That's wonderful. So I have just the tiniest little story. It's like a 5-word, well, not a 5-word story, but a very small story. So this is about my mother, right? So I'm a grown-up, which means my mother is a super grown-up, basically. And she and my uncle, her brother, were talking some years ago about someone who lived on their block, a neighbor of theirs growing up, who had died, because everybody dies eventually, and so they were talking about this neighbor of theirs who had died. And my uncle asked my mother, "Do you remember this woman?" And he described her and said her name. And my mother said, "Well, of course I remember her. She gave out full-size candy bars on Halloween." Have you ever been to a house that gives out full-size candy bars on Halloween? Yes. Are you ever going to forget that house? No. So here is my takeaway from this tiny little story, which is that we don't know what we're going to get remembered for. We don't know who's going to remember us. We could be a stranger who barely knows our name, but remembers that we gave them a full-size candy bar on Halloween. So why don't we be kind and generous with the people we meet? Because we don't know who's going to remember us when we are done. All right. Thank you so much for coming and joining me. Enjoy your classes. Beautiful costumes.
Go your way in peace. Wander as you may. Blessed be the path you take. May love guide you on your way.
Friends, I invite you now into a time of giving and receiving, where we give freely and generously to this offering, which sustains and strengthens our community here, and also our outreach offering recipient, who this week is the Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired, whose mission is to promote the dignity and empowerment of the people of Wisconsin who live with vision loss through advocacy, education, vision services, and one-to-one and group support. There are multiple ways to share your gifts this morning. Baskets are found at the exits to this room, in which you may deposit cash or checks. You'll see on the screen that you can donate directly from our website, fusmadison.org, and you can see as well the text to give information there. We thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we create together. From those who came before us, we gain strength and courage, a challenge to set higher goals for ourselves and make strong our commitment to spend our lives doing what is right. Each of us can think of caregivers, patient teachers, those who taught us what it meant to love another, or who first loved those who first loved us. Lessons from our family members, from friends, perhaps from our early faith communities, the generous legacy left to us by those who no longer inhabit the earth. It's true for each of us as individuals, with our personal stories, and also for us as Unitarian Universalists, with the shared inheritance of our faith. The lessons of those who came before shape the lives that we seek to live today. A favorite lesson of mine has to do with Henry David Thoreau, the iconoclast of the 19th century in New England, known for his strident idealism, his hermit-like habits, and his ridiculous facial hair. During the Mexican-American War, Thoreau refused to pay his poll tax for the reason that he was not inclined to support any war and absolutely would not underwrite the cost of a war to extend the territory in which the slavery of human beings was legal. So one of the range of possible consequences for not paying one's taxes befell Thoreau. He was put in jail. And the story is told by his jailer, in fact, that Thoreau's friend, Ralph Waldo Emerson, came to visit him there. When Emerson saw the younger man, almost a protege of his, he gave him a look of disappointment and asked politely, "Why are you here?" To which Thoreau responded, "Why are you not?" The words and deeds of prophetic persons echo down the ages and offer us examples to follow and moral challenges to which we must rise. But our relationship to our spiritual ancestors, just as with our biological ancestors, is never an entirely simple and easy thing. Take the case of Thoreau's most dedicated descendant, Richard Smith. Many years ago, Richard was a punk rocker living in Ohio and studying history. When he stumbled upon some of Thoreau's writings, he found someone who spoke to both his conscience and his soul, a voice of spiritual revolution which Richard took to heart. He went beyond the man's books and essays to his journals and letters, and then 11 years later, he moved to Concord, Massachusetts to begin work at Walden Pond, the site of Henry David's famous hermitage. Richard dressed up in 19th century apparel and led tours and school groups about the pond, providing historical information and answering questions about Thoreau in the first person. This project was an enormous part of his life, a calling, I would name it, but Richard Smith was aware of a certain underlying tension. In an interview that he gave, Richard told the story of a tour that he led for a group of 8th graders. One of them asked him, "Mr. Thoreau," remember, he was in character as Henry David Thoreau, "if you knew that there was a guy 150 years from now pretending to be you, what would you say?" Richard said that the answer he gave, in which he stood by, as near as he could determine from his study of Thoreau, this is what he thinks Thoreau honestly would say, asked that question. Richard responded to the 8th grader's question by saying, "I would tell him to get his own life and leave mine alone." Both as religious people and simply as human people, we are the recipients of an inheritance which can be both a blessing and a curse. We might choose our faith or even our families, but the legacy we inherit from the dead does not come entirely of our choosing. It's more complicated than that. And in that complexity, in the challenge and the frustration, even the grief, lies its greatest power. When I served a congregation in New England, one of my predecessors in that pulpit, the first of my predecessors, in fact, was the Reverend John Hale, who lived through the madness and inhumanity of the Salem witch trials. Afterwards, he wrote a book declaring those deliberations and executions to have been in error. There was some reason for me and for that congregation to be proud of his final position on the issue. But that book was not published until after his death. It was hardly a timely confrontation with an immediate social evil. John Hale's work is a lesson to me as one of his spiritual descendants that when I see injustice in the courts and lives being taken in the name of ignorance and fear, I ought to speak up to stop it. The 5-year delay in that book's publication is a lesson that I ought to speak sooner rather than later. Looking back upon your own forebears, or the ones whom we share collectively as members of this congregation, perhaps you can see similarly mixed legacies which have been passed on to you. It's just a little bit like this story of Teague O'Kane and the corpse, an old ghost story from Ireland. Now, being as tomorrow is Halloween, I'd like to share it with you. The whole thing takes place many years ago in Ireland, in the county of Leitrim. Teague O'Kane was the rascal son of a wealthy farmer who would never say no to a drink or a game of cards or a chance to spend his father's money. And so it happened that one evening he was out by himself at midnight when he shouldn't have been out at all, and was caught by a band of little people. The little people, the fairies, who are in Irish folklore the original inhabitants of Ireland, are said in the tales to have a special power over anyone who's wasting their life. They got a hold of Teague, and they fastened something great and heavy around his neck. It was a corpse, the body of a man who had recently died, and it held on to Teague with more strength than it had ever had in life. One of the little ones said, "Isn't it lucky we met you, Teague O'Kane? Now listen and do as I say, or you'll repent it. Take this body and bury it tonight before sunrise. Take it to the church at Teampledamus and bury it under the floor. If it can't be there, make it the churchyard at Kirchoff Vicarage. If not that, then the burying ground at Teample Ronan. If it won't go there, you must go to Imlug Fada, and if you can't manage to bury it there, then all you can do is go to Kilbreedia. Whatever it be, you must bury the corpse before dawn." Resigned to his strange errand, Teague set off into the night to the old abandoned church at Teampledamus. After walking for hours with all that weight on his back, he came to the church and he found the doors locked. "The door is shut. I can't open it," he said to himself. And just after he did, he heard a voice in his ear. "Look for the key at the top of the door." "Who was that who spoke?" asked Teague, afraid. "It's just me, the corpse," said the body on his back. "You can talk?" said Teague. "Now and then," said the corpse. Teague found the key, entered the church, and picked out a spot between the pews to dig up the floor for a grave. Just a little bit below the flagstones, he found another body buried there, and as soon as he disturbed it, the dead man sat bolt upright and shouted that this was his grave. Go find another. Teague dug all over the floor of the sanctuary, but it was the same story each time. The house was already full. Yaroslav Pelikan, a 20th century Christian theologian, made a famous distinction between tradition and traditionalism. Tradition is the living faith of the dead, he wrote. Traditionalism is the dead faith of the living. Tradition lives in conversation with the past. Traditionalism supposes that nothing should ever be done for the first time. As a motley assembly of free thinkers and heretics, we Unitarian Universalists have an inborn aversion to traditionalism. But we can sometimes forget that we do have a tradition, and that practicing it and living out its promise requires a deep and sometimes hard conversation with the past. We have a responsibility to struggle with it, even when the demands of the dead seem at odds with the needs of the living present. Now, with no room at Teample Damus, Teague O'Kane and the corpse went on to Kirchoff Vicarus. At the churchyard there, Teague saw hundreds of ghosts gathered and waiting. As he approached, they moved to follow him. At each place where he thought to dig in his shovel, they stood around, huddling together so that he couldn't even get at the earth. He mustered enough courage to call out to them, "Why do you stand in my way?" But the ghosts remained silent, steadfastly denying the corpse a place to be buried. So Ernest Withers was a photographer and one of the leading documentarians of the American Civil Rights Movement. His coverage of the Emmett Till murder trial provided images that brought mainstream national attention to the injustice of the segregated South. Ernest attended and photographed countless rallies and protests. He traveled with Martin Luther King, and he was with him, in fact, on the day that he was shot. Ernest died in 2007, a civil rights hero. A few years later, the picture became more complicated when it was revealed that he had been, for years, a paid informant for the FBI, reporting on the movement and plans of civil rights leaders, including Dr. King. The two sides of the man, Ernest Withers, cannot be divided. The good he did cannot be undone, nor the betrayal. The truth of the past, messy, conflicted, maddeningly inconsistent, still needs a place to reside, even when the pieces do not seem to fit. We understand ourselves best as a species when we recognize that the past, as well as the present, is populated not with heroes and villains, but mortal, contradiction-filled people. Somehow, despite their faults, our ancestors from time to time managed to show love, to make peace, to work for justice. Should not we, their descendants, aspire to do at least as much or more? By now, Teague was dead tired. As he came to Teample Ronan, approaching the gate, he could see that it was empty, with no ghosts or bodies or fairies moving about. When he stepped over the threshold, he thought that he was safe, but some force, something he could not see, picked him up and heaved him into the air. Over the wall he flew and landed hard in a ditch. With just a few hours left until the dawn, and as tired and aching as he was, Teague sorely doubted he could make the ferry's deadline. This past week marked the yahrzeit, the death anniversary of Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Mary Harrington. She died 11 years ago after living with a degenerative illness for several years. She kept a blog of her reflections and experiences, living amidst the gradual process of dying. And just a few days before the end of her life, she wrote in it these words: "In my life as a person, I have stretched myself towards certain goals, such as the kind of spouse, mother, sibling, and friend I long to be for those people in my sphere. Once in a while, I have had that particular thrill of feeling I had gotten something just right. And perhaps I did. But it only lasts such a short time. Even if you could try with all your might to hold on to one of those glorious connections, it just couldn't last. This makes leaving hard, wanting so much to find the moment when all is well in every part of my life and with every person in it. Instead, I have to settle for knowing that at a certain point, things will simply stop where they do. The loose ends and unfinished business of life sit heavy with those near to the end of it, and also with those of us who remain after they depart. At Imlog Fada, there was no gate. There were no grave markers, just a pile of stones. As Teague O'Kane approached them, lightning struck from the dark, clear sky. A fire swept round the whole plot, all red and yellow and blue and growing brighter and higher all the time, with no way across the flame. That was the fourth burying place off the list. Our love for those who have died can sometimes blind us to their imperfections, or in other cases, it can allow us to see past them. But then there are those we struggle even to find some positive lesson from. Some of you have heard me talk before about my great-uncle Charles, my mother's mother's brother, who was one such person for me. Charles was a Roman Catholic priest, and he was also incredibly cantankerous and argumentative. I am not trying to connect those facts. I am just telling you both of them. Roman Catholic priest, incredibly cantankerous and argumentative. I remember with a particular vividness one family dinner that he disrupted by picking a fight with me about evolution, which is officially the teaching of the Catholic Church. So it was not, I'm still angry about that argument. I'm also still angry about the time when he insisted on intentionally mispronouncing the name of Return of the Jedi in order to bother me. In the whole time that he and I were both alive, I cannot remember agreeing with him about even one thing. And yet, here was a man who devoted his whole adult life to religion, who spent decades serving spiritual communities. We went into the same line of work, after all. It must be that we had something in common. The reports of my mother after Uncle Charles had died, and she had been to his wake, bear this out. The people she met there, the people who had kind memories of Charles, were all his congregants. People whose children he had baptized, whose relations he had memorialized, whose hands he had held and hearts he had comforted in trying times. Sometimes, even in death, there is a way in to appreciate and respect a person whom we have struggled to love. With nowhere left to go, the corpse on Teague O'Kane's back whispered the name of the final burying ground, Kilbreedia. Teague did not know the way, and so the dead man reached out an arm to guide him. They came to the place just as the eastern sky was catching light. Teague found there a flat, empty field with a grave already dug and an empty coffin waiting to give some weary wanderer a resting place. Seeing this, the corpse jumped down from Teague's back and laid down in the coffin. Teague O'Kane buried the poor soul, no longer lost, and set off into the morning, free of the fairy's orders and ready to seek out his father and make amends. The struggle to make meaning from the past, to make meaning of the people and events that have shaped us and then passed away, lasts for the whole of our lives. In her final blog post, Reverend Harrington explained her answer for when that struggle gets to be too much. She said, "This is why I rest my eyes on the marsh. Mostly I attune myself with what is easy, swimming or in flight, or the way the current carries the water in and out with such deftness. My hope is that I too will sail off on such a gentle, peaceful current as my friends the geese and ducks do, leaving behind whatever loose ends my little ducky toes didn't have time to complete, but knowing that my people will come with me in my heart." Friends, whatever and whoever you are remembering today, whatever the grief, whatever the joy, whatever the struggle, may the ones who have gone before continue to abide in your heart as you rest also in theirs. Amen.
And now we turn our thoughts to those who are no longer with us. Images come to our minds of dear companions who once graced our lives, loved ones whom we miss, persons whose lives made an impact on our own, of all those who were here, contributing, caring, and are now gone. Our memories bring both joy and sadness. Let us not push these away. For our recollections attest to the enduring importance of these friends, this love, these memories. May these brave and lovely spirits live again in our tender thoughts, proving that death and distance are powerless to sever the bonds, the strings that connect loving hearts. And now I would have us recall all the members of this community who have died within the past year. Maud Carlson, Barb Volker, Jane Pricer, Ken Engelman, Bill Jacobson, Warren Hagstrom, John Tews, Marie McCabe, Beverly McKelvey, David Penn, Bernie Solomon, Louis Mitroff, Patricia Bober, Linda Katoski, Lillian Tong, Joy Wigert, Janine Nussbaum, Eva Wright, Karen Jager, Marion Kaysberg, Al Senti, Michael May. And now we recall your loved ones, those who are living in your memories and your hearts. Bella Rose Savagian, Ed Tenke, Maddie Mortensen, Lou Rosa, Ramona Clift, Ruth McClish, Peter Kossoff, William Moyle, Catherine Donato, Bonnie Jensen, John Hayes, Christy Doxey, Phoebe Bates, Allison Jean Burns, Susan Stevens Gallardin, James Michael Steggy, Nancy Ferguson Horowitz, Peter Edward Mars, Thomas Anthony Daly, Audrey Block. If you have the name of someone that you are holding in your heart today, as I reach out in your direction, we invite you to bring their name here into the room with us.
All my patients that I can't share their names, but I remember them every day.
Rosalie Sullivan.
Bill Carey. Dick Wagner.
Each of us has ancestors and teachers, neighbors and inspirations and all manner of people whose lives have shaped and formed our own. Each of us have known other lives which have helped to make us who we are. On this day, we remember grandparents and confidants, siblings and lovers and friends and children who live with us still in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. We, the living, keep alive the memory of the dead as they also sustain us by the work they did and the love they shared in life. In times of joy and triumph, in times of suffering and pain, in times of contemplation or uncertainty, we are accompanied still by the ones who have gone on before us. As we honor our ancestors, the beloved dead who have made our lives possible. Let us bless them. May the memory of those who have loved us persist in the love that we give and endure in the love of all those who will one day remember us. Blessed be, and amen.
There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love. And now let us rise in body and or in spirit to sing our closing hymn together in the Teal hymnal, number 1051. We are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
I do not know where we go when we die, and I do not know what the soul is, or what death is, or when, or why. What I know is that the song once sung cannot be unsung, and the life once lived cannot be unlived, and the love once loved cannot be unloved. Blessed be, go in peace, and please be seated for the postlude.